Hi, and welcome to English-Fabule. Are you learning English? Great. Let's learn English with a very interesting story. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. Let's get started.
Imagine a very long and difficult war. This was World War II in Europe. For almost 6 years, countries fought. Cities were damaged and many people lost their homes and loved ones. Life was hard and full of fear. Sirens often sounded, warning people about danger from the sky. Then, in the spring of 1945, everything started to change. The fighting was coming to an end. Finally, the news came: Germany surrendered. The war in Europe was over. Think about that moment. Suddenly, the sirens stopped making their scary noise. The sound of fighting ended. There was quiet, and then there was joy. People opened their windows and doors. They ran out into the streets. Strangers hugged each other. They laughed, they sang, and many people cried. Some tears were happy because the war was finished. Some tears were sad, remembering the difficult years and the people who were lost. This special day is called Victory in Europe Day, often shortened to VI Day. It was a day of huge feelings, relief, happiness, and hope for a better future. Millions of people felt free from the fear that had been part of their lives for so long. Peace had finally arrived in Europe. Remembering this day is very important for many countries. It helps people remember the great cost of the war. They remember the soldiers who fought and the ordinary people who suffered. It is a time to think about the value of peace and freedom. Every year, people mark this day in different ways. Some have quiet ceremonies, while others have big celebrations. This shows how much the end of the war meant and still means to so many people. This story will explore how different countries remember Victory Day. We will learn about the history of this day and see the different traditions. We will understand why this date is marked on the calendar and why its memory continues to be important in today's world. Let's discover the story of Victory Day together. 2. What is Victory Day? Victory Day is a very important date for many countries. It marks the day when World War II officially ended in Europe. This happened in May 1945. After many years of fighting, Germany agreed to stop the war. The leader of Nazi Germany, Adolf Hitler, was dead. The new German leader, Karl Dönitz, gave permission for Germany's armed forces to surrender. This means they agreed to stop fighting completely. To make it official, German military leaders signed important papers. These papers were called the German Instrument of Surrender. The first signing happened in Reims, France on May 7th. Then, a final signing took place in Berlin, Germany, late on May 8th. These papers stated that all German military actions must stop at 11:01 p.m. Central European Time on May 8th. This act formally ended the war across Europe. The news of Germany's surrender brought huge relief and happiness. For millions of people living under Nazi control or suffering from the war, it meant freedom. The fighting stopped, the bombs stopped falling, and the fear began to lift. This is why the day is often called Victory Day. It celebrates the victory of the Allied countries like the United Kingdom, the United States, the Soviet Union, and France over Nazi Germany. In some places, the day is also called Liberation Day. Liberation means being set free. This name remembers the people and countries that were freed from Nazi rule. For example, East Germany used to call May 8th its Tag der Befreiung, which means Liberation Day. Other countries also use this name to focus on the freedom gained. So, Victory Day is about remembering the end of a long and terrible war in Europe. It remembers the moment Germany's forces stopped fighting. It is a day to celebrate the victory won by the Allies. It is also a day to remember the liberation of millions of people and the return of peace to the continent. When leaders like Winston Churchill in the UK and President Truman in the USA announced the news, people poured into the streets to celebrate. Even though the war against Japan continued for a few more months, the end of the war in Europe was a huge moment of hope and joy for the whole world. 3. 2 days to remember. People around the world celebrate the end of World War II in Europe. But why do some countries remember this important event on May 8th, while others remember it on May 9th? The answer is simple: time. Germany needed to surrender. This means they had to agree to stop fighting completely. The first important paper was signed in Reims, a city in France. This happened on May 7, 1945. A German general named Alfred Jodl signed it. Leaders from the Allied countries like the USA and Britain were there. A Soviet general, Ivan Susloparov, was also there. However, the leader of the Soviet Union, Joseph Stalin, was not completely happy. He felt the signing in Reims was not the main event. He said it was only a first step. Stalin wanted a final, official signing in Berlin, the capital of Germany. The Allies agreed, so another signing ceremony took place in Berlin. This happened late in the evening on May 8, 1945. It was about 10:43 at night in Berlin. This time, a very important German military leader, Field Marshal Wilhelm Keitel, signed the surrender papers. Marshal Georgy Zhukov signed for the Soviet Union. Air Chief Marshal Arthur Tedder signed for the Western Allies. Leaders from the United States and France watched. This second signing was seen as the final, official end of the war in Europe. The surrender document said that all German soldiers must stop fighting. The fighting had to stop at 11:01 p.m. Central European Time on May 8th. This was the official time for peace to begin. Here is why the date is different for some countries. Berlin uses Central European Time. Moscow, the capital of Russia, is in a different time zone. Moscow time is ahead of Berlin time. When it was 11:01 p.m. on May 8th in Berlin, it was already 1 minute past midnight in Moscow. That means it was already May 9th in Moscow. Because of this time difference, countries like the United Kingdom, France, and the United States celebrate Victory in Europe Day, or VE Day, on May 8th. They remember the time the surrender was signed in Berlin and the fighting stopped in Central Europe. Russia and many countries that were part of the Soviet Union, like Belarus and Kazakhstan, celebrate Victory Day on May 9th. They remember the moment the peace began according to Moscow time. So the same important event, the end of the war in Europe, is remembered on 2 different days because of the time zones. 4. Parties in the West. Countries in Western Europe remember the end of the war on May 8th. Many call this day Victory in Europe Day, or VE Day. It is a time to think about the fighting stopping and the start of peace. In the United Kingdom, VE Day in 1945 was a very big celebration. After years of war, people were extremely happy. They ran into the streets, sang songs, and had parties. In London, huge crowds filled famous places like Trafalgar Square. Many people went to Buckingham Palace. King George VI and Queen Elizabeth came out onto the palace balcony with Prime Minister Winston Churchill. They waved to the happy crowds. Mr. Churchill also spoke to the people. He told them, "This is your victory." People cheered and sang for him. The young Princess Elizabeth, who later became Queen Elizabeth II, and her sister Margaret even went out secretly to join the celebrations in the streets. Today, VE Day is not always a public holiday in the UK. But for special years, like the 50th or 75th anniversary, May 8th was made a special day off work for people to remember. In France, May 8th is always a national public holiday. People do not go to work or school. They remember the end of the war and celebrate freedom. In the French city of Orléans, May 8th is extra special. They celebrate VE Day and also remember Joan of Arc freeing their city hundreds of years ago on the same date. Germany remembers May 8th in a different way. They often call it Day of Liberation. It marks the end of the Nazi government and the end of the war in Europe. It is a day to remember being freed from Nazism. Germans think about the people who fought against the Nazis and the many people who died during the war. In Berlin and other cities, there are events to remember this history. It is an important time to think about the past. Other countries in Western Europe also mark this time. Austria holds a festival of joy on May 8th in the city of Vienna. The Netherlands celebrates Liberation Day on May 5th each year. It is a public holiday there. Norway remembers May 8th as Liberation Day too. It is also a special day for their war veterans. Poland now calls May 8th National Victory Day. They used to remember on May 9th but changed the date in 2015. The Czech Republic also marks May 8th as Victory Day or Liberation Day, and it is a public holiday. For these nations, this time of year is about remembering peace after a long and difficult war. 5. Big parades in the East. While some countries remember the end of the war on May 8th, many countries in Eastern Europe and former Soviet countries celebrate on May 9th. This date is very important, especially in Russia. For Russia, May 9th is Victory Day. It is a day with very strong feelings because millions of people from the Soviet Union died in the war. Remembering them is a big part of the day. The holiday became a day off work in 1965. In Moscow, the capital of Russia, there is a famous large parade every year on May 9th. This parade happens in Red Square, a big open space in the city center. Many soldiers march in the parade. People watch as tanks, military trucks, and other army vehicles drive past. Sometimes planes fly over the square too. It is a very big event for the country and many people watch it on television. These big parades have been a tradition for a long time, starting in the Soviet Union. Other countries also celebrate Victory Day on May 9th. Belarus has big celebrations, and it is a national holiday there too. They often have parades and events to remember the soldiers and the end of the war. Kazakhstan also marks May 9th as a national holiday. They sometimes have military parades or other special events. Other countries like Armenia, Azerbaijan, Serbia, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan also remember this important day on May 9th. In Uzbekistan, May 9th is called the Day of Remembrance and Honor. In recent years, a new tradition started in Russia and spread to other places. It is called the Immortal Regiment. On Victory Day, thousands of people walk together in cities. They carry photographs of their family members who fought in the war or lived during that time. It is a quiet and personal way to remember the people from the past. People walk together, holding the pictures high. This march shows how the war touched almost every family. For these countries, May 9th is a day to remember the great victory, the many lives lost, and the importance of peace. 6. Remembering then and now. Remembering the end of World War II has not always been the same. The way countries marked Victory Day changed over the years after 1945. Politics and time changed how people remembered. After the war, Europe was divided for many years. This time was called the Cold War. Countries in the West, like the United Kingdom and France, usually marked May 8th. Countries in the East followed the Soviet Union. They celebrated on May 9th. For example, Poland celebrated May 9th from 1945 until 2014. Big parades were sometimes held in its capital city, Warsaw. East Germany called May 8th Liberation Day for many years, but later sometimes called it Victory Day. Czechoslovakia had large military parades on May 9th every 5 years. In the Soviet Union itself, May 9th became an official holiday from work in 1965. So East and West remembered the end of the war on different days and often in different ways. Things changed again after the Soviet Union ended around 1991. Russia kept May 9th as its Victory Day. For a few years in the 1990s, the celebrations were not as big. But later, leaders like Vladimir Putin brought back very large parades in Moscow's Red Square. Many other countries that were part of the Soviet Union, like Belarus and Kazakhstan, also continued to celebrate May 9th. However, some countries decided to change their traditions. Poland officially moved its National Victory Day to May 8th in 2015. This matched the date used in Western Europe. Some local groups or Russian people in Poland might still remember May 9th. The Czech Republic also chose May 8th as its official Victory Day after 1993. Ukraine made changes too. It started using May 8th as the day of remembrance and victory over Nazism. May 9th became Europe Day in Ukraine. This showed a move towards Europe. The Baltic states, as Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, always remembered May 8th. For them, May 9th brought Soviet occupation, not liberation. Germany also sees May 8th as a day of liberation from Nazism. These examples show how remembering history can change. Politics plays a big part. When governments change, or when countries' relationships change, the meaning of historical days can also change. How a country celebrates Victory Day tells us something about its history and how it sees its place in the world today. 7. What does Victory Day mean now? Victory Day is still important many years after the Second World War ended. But what does it mean today? The answer is not the same everywhere. Different countries and people remember the end of the war in different ways. Feelings about this day can be complex. For everyone, the day remembers the end of a very big and terrible war in Europe. It is a time to think about peace after the fighting stopped. Millions of people were free from war. Many remember the soldiers and people who suffered or died. In countries like the United Kingdom and France, people often celebrate May 8th. They remember the victory and the freedom it brought. For many, it's a happy day. In Germany, May 8th is seen as the day of liberation. It marks the end of the Nazi government. In Russia and some countries from the former Soviet Union, May 9th is the big day. It is a very important holiday with strong national pride. People remember the huge number of citizens and soldiers who died. Big parades remember the country's sacrifice, but the end of the war meant different things. In some countries like Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, Soviet control followed Nazi control. For them, May 9th brings difficult memories. These countries often mark May 8th as a day of remembrance instead. Their experience shows history is complicated. Politics today also changes how Victory Day is remembered. Problems between countries can affect celebrations. For example, because of conflict with Russia, Ukraine changed how it marks the end of the war. It now officially remembers May 8th, calling it Day of Remembrance and Victory over Nazism. Poland also moved its official day to May 8th. These changes show how current events shape our view of the past. Even symbols can have different meanings now. The ribbon of St. George, orange and black, is a famous Victory Day symbol in Russia. Many wear it with pride, but in some other countries today, people see this ribbon differently because of recent political problems. So, Victory Day today is about more than just history. It shows how people use the past to understand the present. It connects to feelings about national identity. It is a day of celebration for some, sad memories for others, and sometimes linked to current politics. Remembering the end of the war is still important, but how we remember changes. 8. Learning from the past. Remembering the end of the Second World War in Europe is very important. This war was a terrible time for the whole world. Millions of people died. Many soldiers fought and many lost their lives far from home. Families suffered greatly, losing parents, children, brothers, and sisters. We remember all these people, the soldiers and the ordinary people who lived through the war. We remember their bravery and their suffering. When the war ended in Europe, it was a time of great happiness but also sadness for what was lost. People celebrated the end of the fighting and the start of peace. Today, different countries remember this important time in their own ways. As we learned, some countries mark May 8th, while others mark May 9th. Some have big parades with soldiers and music. Others have quiet ceremonies or street parties. In some places, it is called Victory Day. In others, it is called Liberation Day. The names and the celebrations can be different. But even with these differences, the main feeling is often the same. People remember the high price of war. They remember the importance of peace. The end of the war brought hope to millions of people. Remembering this helps everyone hope for a future without such terrible wars. It is a shared hope for peace and safety. History teaches us important lessons. Looking back helps us understand what happened and why. The Second World War showed how dangerous hate and conflict can be. Remembering the war helps us see how valuable peace and freedom really are. It shows us that countries need to work together and respect each other. Learning from the past is not just about looking back. It is about building a better future. Remembering the end of the war reminds us that peace needs work. We need to solve problems by talking and understanding each other, not by fighting. Keeping the memory of the war alive helps us protect peace for people today and for the children of tomorrow. It is a promise to try and make the world a safer place for everyone. How do you think remembering this day helps us work for peace today?
Hey there! Just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really, really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank you.